Hello everyone, welcome back to Misericorde. The last time we left off, we drew a cute, adorable cat with Flora, and some creepy stuff happened in Hedwig's old cell. But anyway, without further ado, let's just get right into today's episode. I was completely exhausted by the time I made it to the dormitory. The relatively light art supply box weighed heavy like a millstone going up the stairs. I practically slammed it onto my desk as soon as I made it to my room. An early night was the only thing I could think about. I got into my night clothes as fast as I could, as if I was trying to prove to myself that I indeed intended to follow through on the idea. My body was so stiff that even stripping out of my habit felt laborious, and when I bent down to pick my nightdress off the floor, I wondered if I even had the energy to stand up straight again. I groaned impolitely as I straightened out and let the clothes slip over me. Never again in my life did I want to run or hike. I was ready to sleep. However, as I ran my hands over the mattress in an attempt to straighten it out a little, I realized I had forgotten something important. There was still a book on my bed. A copy of the Gospel of Matthew that I had dropped off in a hurry before returning to Flora. Now I'm getting scared again. As ominous as it was, I was at least glad I hadn't smacked my head into it as I had with the copy of Medea currently underneath the bed. I opened the book. The cover was still slightly damp, and some of the pages had fused together. I thumbed through carefully to the pages that had been opened when I had vomited all over it. The black bile had faded, but it was quite obviously ruined. I was not sure what I was looking for, a clue perhaps, of who had returned it to my cell, or how. Perhaps some demon had magicked it there through the accursed sigil. Why exactly this devil's nefarious plan included returning books to rooms they had been thrown out of, I had no immediate hypothesis. I turned to the page I had been working on when my time in the cell had been interrupted. Matthew 5:37. As I studied the ruined pages and saw no hidden messages nor threats, my anxiety evaporated. I slammed the book shut and threw it onto the floor with a thud. It was obviously another one of Eustace's pranks, I reasoned. No way. This is way too out there to be Eustace's pranks. The timing was certainly convenient after the threats her ghost had given me in the Misericorde. I scoffed aloud with some small hope that she was somehow within earshot. Undoubtedly, if I hadn't knocked her onto her arse and unmasked her at that night, this book would have been revealed to me at some portentous moment. She must have stored it in my cell to keep it out of view until whenever suited her little plan. I could just see her casually asking the superior for the key in that infuriatingly flat voice of hers. She'd probably said she needed something for my shelf or the library. I slammed my fist into my pillow and buried my face in a divot. Then I remembered something. I pulled myself up on my knees and lifted my pillow. The little strip of black cloth was there. Proof. I reached over the bed for my stocking and stuffed it inside. I couldn't wait to see the look on Eustace's face when I showed her that. If I could find a missing patch on her frock. I laid down feeling satisfied. I imagined profuse apologies over and over, and yet I still went to sleep angry. The morning offices and luncheon passed in a blur the next day. I went through the motions, but my mind was elsewhere. I had sleepwalked through several days when I had been feeling morose, but today was different. There was a high-pitched whine between my eyes, so intense that I had a headache by the end of service. I felt as light as a bee and equally as prone to sting whoever bothered me. It was not all anger. Some of it, I realized as luncheon came to a close, was nervous anticipation. I kept glancing over at Eustace, who seemed, to my chagrin, completely unbothered. The superior was waiting for us outside a directory when we all left because they're going to the village, right? She pointed at Eustace, Moira, and myself and beckoned for us to join her. Are you all ready for a little fun? Absolutely. Good. It's high time the women of this abbey made an appearance in Lambaro village, and I thought an adventure outside the abbey would be an exciting little adventure for our newest. Well, not newest, but you know what I mean. That's you. That's me. Just a little treat. I was losing count of the little lies I was having to go along with for the sake of this quest. Moira and Darcy worked hard yesterday to bake some fritters to share with the townsfolk. What is it we're actually meant to do there? The superior shot me a quizzical look. Spread some cheer, of course. Attend to the people's spiritual needs. Nothing heals the soul like a sweet treat. They're really good too, if I do say so myself. Eustace had said nothing for the course of the entire conversation. She remained silent as the superior led us across the grounds to the front gate. A cart and donkey were waiting for us. There was a sturdy chest loaded onto the wooden cart that looked like one of us could have fit inside snugly. I don't like that comparison. If it was full of sweet fritters, Darcy and Moira must have been very busy. I have no idea we kept the mule here. We do not. Typically, we have to send word to have one delivered from the village if we need to travel, but this one has remained here ever since the incident. Oh, that is ominous. So it's James's cart? Oh. This was a donkey and cart that James had been driving when he was last free. Just how many animals was Darcy technically responsible for at this point? Moira stepped into the driver's seat of the cart, leaving me and Eustace to sit facing each other in the back. Oh, that is awkward. The superior looked uncharacteristically amused at the sight of us loaded into the vehicle. My girls, off on a diplomatic mission together. Had I had the means, I would commission a painting. I haven't been down to the village in months at least. This is going to be a riot. She shook the reins and the cart wobbled forward. Moira turned to wave at the superior. Eustace and I followed suit, although we were both less enthusiastic than Moira. Well, the superior seems kind of sweet at least. Kinda like an old auntie. The superior disappeared behind the road as it began to curve downwards. I looked ahead and suddenly felt a wave of panic as I realized just how long and winding the path down a mountain was and how far afield I was about to find myself. Stuck in a cart with someone I'd rather never speak to again, no less. So, this will be new for you. I suppose it will be. Listen, Eustace, I have no real interest in speaking with you at the moment. Even though Eustace seemed like she wanted to apologize. You two, let's not fight, Let's pretend all our little problems only exist in the abbey, and out here we're just traveling missionaries. Or brave soldiers on patrol. No. Or adventurous outlaws. Hedwig, I owe you an apology. More than one. She sighed and adjusted how she was sitting. She rested her forehead in her hands and looked at the floor of the cart. I should have said something yesterday, but I was indisposed. So, I'm sorry this took so long, first of all. And I apologize for, well, remind me. I felt strangely powerful. I folded my arms. I'm sorry that I dressed up as a ghost. I'm sorry I tried to scare you. I went a bit far. You did it more than once. Yes. How? Why? I mean, it was so elaborate. Well, I am sacrist. I saw the suit of armor and thought, well, this could be good for a lark. What on earth for? Some lark? It's Abbey tradition to do some sort of hazing prank. I just got carried away. That is so petty. Petty and cruel. I understand Hedwig's position, but also, I think I'm inclined to believe Eustace here when she says it's just a prank that has gone out of control. I mean, she does seem very sorry as well. Even if it was appropriate to haze nuns, which it is not, why couldn't it be nicer? Aren't there any nice pranks? You're right. What about, I don't know, a surprise feast or a gift? Something along those lines? I won't argue with you. You could have just said, boo, perhaps. That would still be a touch mean-spirited, but you killed a goat for your own entertainment. Eustace shook her head. I did not kill a goat. That is entirely in your imagination. I saw it plainly. Anything you saw like that was a trick of the mind, I promise. So I'm mad, is that it? No, it happens to everyone. In a heightened emotional state, you'll often see things that conform to your expectations. Or fears, as it were. That is ridiculous. Eustace seems quite knowledgeable. It's true. Did you know there's a mosque in Turkey where worshippers believe they see the ghost of a young woman in the shadows? It sounds ridiculous, but so many people have claimed to have seen her it could hardly be an accident. They all see a girl wearing a crown. I don't particularly care what they're up to in Turkey. Eustace let out a heavy sigh. Look, the point is, sometimes people see things that aren't there that feel very real. I promise you that I did not kill a goat. I may have been nasty to you, but I wouldn't have killed an innocent animal just to scare you. So, there was no goat at all? I did not kill a goat in front of you. I would not do that. But you would dress up as a ghost. Yes. And wave a flaming sword around. Yes, when you put it that way, it does sound rather a cruel joke. How did you even light the sword on fire? I brushed the blade with oil and held it up to a torch. That's all. I looked her dead in the eyes. She matched my gaze for a moment before the cart hit a bump and her glasses were knocked askew. Moira was chuckling softly. Whoops, sorry, I'm not very good at this. Eustace rearranged her glasses and sighed. I don't always have a perfect grasp of how people might react to things I say or do. Sometimes I run with an idea that isn't as clever as I think it is, or speak my mind to people who weren't interested in my input. Oh, I understand completely. I'm sure you've noticed that I can be rather inscrutable. I was going to say flat, but I'll take inscrutable. Eustace is Eustace. Yes. Thank you, Moira. See? At any rate, I would really like to put this behind us. We have to work together after all. Will you accept my apology? Or what? Eustace was approaching this request as if my acquiescence was guaranteed, but I did not respond in kind. I felt vindictive, more vindictive than I had felt in my entire life. She looked surprised that I hadn't budged. For my prank, as I said. And my behavior in general, I suppose, which, as you say, can be inscrutable. I will do my best to change that. He seems quite earnest. Does that include moving my things around? Perhaps putting things in my cell to find later? What? I found it. A copy of Matthew I dropped out of the window the night you were watching me in my cell. Hedwig, I do not know what you are talking about. You have no reason to lie about this anymore. I saw you in your ridiculous costume that very night. In my cell, I could see you in the grass. I was not there. My temper flared, and I let out an embarrassing noise, somewhere between a groan and a shriek. I pulled up my frock and pulled the piece of cloth I had found outside the abbey out. Somewhat awkwardly, Eustace looked utterly nonplussed. I found this out there. Who else could have been but you? Any one of us? A drifter? A soldier marching past the abbey who got his cloak stuck on a branch that just so happened to coincide with one woman's mad delusion months later. It could have been anyone, Hedwig. But it wasn't me. Why should I believe you? Why should you accuse her so much? But at the same time, Hedwig, I can kind of understand it. After what you did the other night, I could feel myself turning scarlet as I sputtered. I noticed Moira shrinking in her seat ahead of us, and I suddenly felt very embarrassed. Are you gonna hit me again? No. No, of course not. Alright. Well, you could if you wanted to. I don't want to. Well, that's good. She rubbed her cheek. It did hurt quite a bit. I felt horrible now. I looked towards the back of the cart for a while, watching the road move beneath us. I'm sorry. Truly. And you promise that you haven't left any mysterious books for me anywhere? I did not put that book in your cell. I haven't ever been in your cell at all, as a matter of fact. I looked back towards Eustace. She was holding a hand out to me, and she had the faintest hint of a pleading look in her eye. I was not sure what to do. I was furious with her still, but I knew that letting that anger stew any longer would only serve to make me miserable. After all, we had to work in the same room. Not only that, but I still felt highly guilty for attacking Eustace in response to a practical joke. Justified or not, it was not a response that had ever been in my repertoire, and I very much wanted to never feel compelled to violence ever again. I wanted to bury those feelings deep in the ground forever. I was still mulling over my response when a pair of fritters appeared in front of my face. Would these help? Eustace and I both looked over at Moira, whose back was still turned to us as she watched the road ahead. And how did she hand it over? She had reached one arm behind her, two tasty-looking pastries held like Adela's cards between her fingers. I tucked the little black cloth I had been waving in Eustace's face back into my stocking and sighed. Just wondering. Hee. Eustace and I both took one. I nibbled at it and instantly felt at peace. Wow. These are good. They were supposed to be all for the village, but I snuck a few away for the trip. I'm glad you did. I could hear Moira crunching into her own fritter. Ooh, so am I now. Goodness, these are some lucky people we're about to visit. I thought you didn't like Limbaro, Moira. Oh, I have my criticisms. Eustace took another bite of a pastry. I suppose we all do. Catherine, most of all. I doubt she would have approved of this gesture. Oh, she would have done it. She would have just complained a lot beforehand. And after. They chuckled as if sharing a private joke. We finished our fritters. Eustace licked her fingers and wiped the crumbs off of her frock before extending a hand out to me again. Friends? I paused for a moment, but I couldn't keep this self-righteous act up much longer. Even if I did not fully believe that Eustace hadn't also placed that book in my cell as some part of an elaborate next step in her foiled prank, I suppose I had no reason to hang it over her head forever. I reached out and grabbed Eustace's wrist, and her fingers curled around my own. Friends. Eustace smiled, but her face soon returned to its default flat expression as soon as she leaned back against the side of the cart. Though, why wouldn't Catherine have liked doing this? She also had opinions about the townsfolk. I'm a little shocked. Does anybody have a good relationship with the town? I'm sure the superior handles it all well enough. Surely it felt a little odd that nobody from the village came to seek your advice when you were an anchoress. I was surprised until I had it explained to me that, well, we're having to take a cart ride to even get there, aren't we? That's right. I think that people never really like that fact. It put us on the wrong foot from the get-go. But Limbaro Abbey is rather old, isn't it? surely things might have been, I don't know, improved? Right. The distance and inconvenience is just a part of it. Well, you'll see. I suppose if I had to put it delicately, if we had the ability to choose what kind of villages our abbey served, which we don't, of course not. But if we did, well, it wouldn't be a town like Limbero. Seems like it's a very shady town, unpleasant town. I was quite frankly appalled by this. If I hadn't already shaken hands and made out with Eustace, I might reconsider agreeing to the endeavor after hearing such conceited talk. I feel like Hedwig. She definitely sounds very self-righteous, but also, like, I don't know. We'll see later on, but I feel like no matter how much she wants to appear as someone who, as a duty, care for the people, she is definitely flawed. And I think does not let her speak like that. What a horrible thing to say. It is what it is. You'll see when we get there. They're not all bad. I was trying to think of things to say that wouldn't reopen the just sutured one between Eustace and myself, and was struggling to come up with anything. However, just as the cart rounded a sharp switchback corner, I thought of something Catherine had said in the Misericorde. I hadn't dared to mention the assignment the Superior had given me for this excursion, but I reasoned that since Catherine herself had mentioned it to me while drinking, it wouldn't arouse suspicion. Catherine is from this village, isn't she? Catherine was Irish! She means Catherine the First. Oh, silly me. Sorry. Anyway, yes, Catherine used to live in Limbero. She mentioned something about being run out of town. She seemed rather bitter about it. As well as she should. I'm surprised she told you all of this. But yes, it's true. We don't talk about it much. It's a fast way to put her in a rotten mood. I would feel the same. It's so unfair. Would it be prying too much to ask what exactly happened? She was quite vague about it. It's not our story to tell. Like I said, it's a touchy subject. Suffice to say, it put me off the town. The way they treated her... I won't pry. That's good. I'd be chuffed that she told me anything about it at all, though. That's real trust, that. This line of questioning seemed to be a non-starter. I had hoped for a moment that I could get my assignment completed before stepping out of the cart. A wave of panic hit me as I realized that not only were my environs about to be completely unfamiliar, I was about to be surrounded by people. Strange new people who sounded like they were predisposed to dislike me. I did poorly enough navigating my own conflicts now. Now, though, I would be forced to deal with a feud that sounded like it had been simmering for years. How long ago had Catherine been ousted from Limbero? How long before that had the townsfolk resented the abbey up on the hill? I was inheriting a mess that may well have started before I was even born. The rest of our journey went without conversation. Eustace furrowed her brow and rested her chin on her hands, gazing out of the back of the cart for the remainder of the trip. I couldn't bring myself to relax. That the miasma of indignance towards Eustace had more or less dissipated. Now, panic was setting in. I began to worry about falling out of the cart and hurting myself. What if I got lost in town and Moira and Eustace were forced to leave me there? What if a particularly large crate fell on my head? What if I was set upon by strangers with murderous or less vicious intent? If I had to choose one of these scenarios, which was most likely, and which would be my preferred outcome? I was mulling over these ghoulish bits of calculus so intensely that I didn't notice that the cart had stopped. Hedwig? Village Farm. Is that a new font? We're here. Moira had stopped the cart next to the wooden post on the edge of a very muddy road. Yetch. Yetch! I should have remembered to wear boots. I remembered! Moira finished tying the donkey's rein to the post and enthusiastically lifted her rope to show off her shoes. Wow, fancy. I didn't know there were any boots at the Abbey. There must once it starts snowing. Ask the superior about it when you get the chance. Although, the ones we typically get aren't as posh as those. Hehe. These were a gift. Lucky you. Hedwig, don't worry about the mud. Just get out of the cart. It looks really foul. Jump over here. It's not quite as mushy. I don't know. Just step down. It's really not that bad. I glanced between Eustace, whose rope was already getting muddy around the fringe, and Moira, who was enthusiastically gesturing at me from her position on a harder packed bit of road. Against my better instinct, I awkwardly positioned myself on the edge of the cart and... oh no, did she fall? Wow! Miraculously, I had landed on the sturdy bit of the road. My legs, clearly still weak from my recent bouts of sprinting, screamed at me to never do that again and gave way almost immediately. Luckily, Moira caught me and my head crashed onto her shoulders and we both stumbled together for a few steps before regaining our footing. That's nice. Sorry. Don't be. Who would have known that we had a little acrobat tucked away in that cell? Yes, very well done. Unfortunately, I'm going to need both of you to step back over here to help me with the fritters. Thankfully, we didn't need to lug the whole crate around. While we did end up having to traipse around in the mud to retrieve them, Darcy had organized the sweet treats into 3 cloth sacks for us to carry. I realized that the heaviest thing about our cargo had been the chest itself, which looked like it might have been able to withstand a catapult. Where should we start? Eustace nodded towards a farmhouse not far from where our donkey was hitched. Here is a good place as any. We lugged our bags of baked goods towards the modest house. The land was just on the edge of the huge hill we had just ridden our way down. A few trees dotted the well-grazed lawn, and a lone horse stood idly close to the table. Stable! I couldn't help but feel that it looked deep in thought. As we approached, a side door to the house swung open. What's all this, then? We come bearing gifts. Is that right? A woman emerged behind a gruff-looking man. Both of them looked cautious. Feels like it's been donkey years since you lot came down here. Sister Moira and Sister Eunice, right? Eustace, milady. My apologies. I don't recognize this one. Oh, this is Sister Hedwig. She's new. I tried to say something, but all I could muster was a little noise. I waved instead. We heard about Catherine. Terrible thing, that. I can't help but feel responsible. Why? Oh, because they all think it's James who did it, and he was from the village? Please don't. It's not your fault. James was a troubled boy well before we started looking after him. Oh, so this is James's foster parents or people that he lived with? No helping some people, that's what I've learned. That's a pretty pessimistic outview. James lived here? Aye, my nephew. Always a little funny, that one, but I never would have. I didn't know he was that kind of blackguard. Lost his family in a war years ago. Aye. They were taken for spies traveling home one night. He beat what, 22, 23 now? He was supposed to be running the family inn by now, but he wasn't cut out for being a landlord. I'm not sure there's much of an inn left. Anyway, we took him in and put him to work on the farm. We do modest work here. A little bit of animal husbandry, but the real money is in stabling the horses for folk in town. James was a real helping hand on a good day, but he had a habit of running off whenever he felt like it, sleeping in, being a nuisance in town. God rest him, but he was a sloppy worker. Terrible with the animals. Never had more livestock go missing than when we left it up to him. We were doing something good taking him in. He had potential. Some people find their way later than others. I really do believe that. It was only right. But now, here we are. If you're here to solicit donations, it'd only be right for us to be generous. Oh, that's so kind. But we're actually here to bring you something. Moira opened her bag and held it out to the couple. Well now, did Sister Darcy make these? That's right. In that case, I don't mind if I do. He and his wife happily took a pastry each. They bit into them, and I could see a sense of relief overtake their worried faces. Crumbs, that's good. Too right. He took another bite. As he munched, he pointed a thick, calloused finger towards me. So what's your story? It's not altogether very interesting. I heard about Catherine, and I felt compelled to help. After all, she was a chronicler and I used to write all day, so... She was our anchoress. Ah, I see. One of those hermits. I didn't know they could just up and stop. It's unusual, certainly. I imagine it must be quite strange leaving a position like that after so much time. Were you born in there? Born in there? No. I was very young when I started, though. What's your favorite thing about being free? Oh, don't upset her. She was not free before. It's an important job, innit? That's right. Oh, I don't mean to offend. Still, though, it must be very different to be out and about all of a sudden. Hedwig is taking a real shine to her new work. Yes, she's really been putting her back into it. I couldn't tell if this was meant to be a jab at the altercation I thought we had just put behind us or not, but it irritated me all the same. Well, that's good to hear. I'm sorry, I never made use of your services while you were anchored. Only it's quite a commitment getting up there and back. We had James make that trip more often than not. If there was one thing he was always good for, it was that. Mail, supplies, that sort of thing. That was all his purview. I suppose he must have set his wicked sights on Sister Catherine. Maybe he was watching her this whole time. Best not to speculate. And don't blame yourself. If it would make you feel better to make some sort of donation, I can let the Superior know. Not that we came here to solicit that sort of thing, mind you. Oh no, of course not. I hope I didn't offend. No. It's, well, it'd only be right. Yes. I wanted very badly to tell these poor people that I had spoken with James and that I was trying my very best to help him. Whatever joy the fritters had brought was nothing compared to the pain I could sense behind their rugged faces. These were delicious, by the way. Sister Darcy always was a talent. You lot should come down here more often. I agree. I suppose you'll be off to see the town now? Yes. Hopefully we brought enough of these. I won't bother you for seconds then. You have a good day now, sisters. Pecs babies, whatever that means. We all exchanged nods. Eustace led the way past the farm back towards the road. That went better than I had feared. Really? I'd rather get cupped than do that again. Those poor people. They were really very sweet. How horrible for them, though. I only meant that... I don't know. In the cart ride down, I was half expecting to be met with swords and spears. Who says we won't be? We're not in the village proper yet. Oh man. I stopped dead in my tracks. The buildings ahead of us loomed like some dark fortress's gate, and I suddenly became very aware once again that I was further from my cell than I had ever been. Further than the hills. Further than the hospitalum. Oh, Eustace, don't scare her. Sorry. I'm just being glib. Are you ready, Hedwig? Hold on. I doubled over, still clinging to my bag of fritters. I tried my best to take deep breaths, but it was difficult. I was no longer in complete control of my faculties. Hedwig? You can do it, Hedwig. I'm so far from home. You have friends with you. It's all right. What if I just drove the cart back myself? Man, if I've ever been in that situation, totally relatable. I could send someone else back down with it to collect you. I've had quite enough for a day, I think. Well, it is quite a lot for someone whose first time interacting with a whole bunch of strangers outside the Abbey. A long, long while. Do you know how to drive a cart and mule? It's going to be fine. I was just grousing on the ride down. It's just silly personal drama. I probably made it seem bigger than it really is. At worst, it'll be a little awkward. You can handle awkward? Want to go back? Look, if someone is rude to you, you have my permission to slap them. Why does she need your permission? Eustace! At least she's laughing. I took a particularly large gulp of air and stood up straight. Uh-oh. Look, you definitely shouldn't slap anyone here. I was joking. Hehe. It was funny. Okay. But seriously, do not. I won't. I would never. Guess I got lucky. Are you ready? Let's get this over with, shall we? Entering the village proper was immediately dizzying. I had only just started growing accustomed to the size and scope of the Abbey. But now I was surrounded by buildings and streets that were unto themselves their own little abbeys. Despite being spread out between buildings, courtyards, gates, and windows, I had been able to think about Limbarrow Abbey as one place. Leaving my soul had been painful, but I was at least still in a world I could understand. I could not bring myself to think about the village in the same way, even though it was the village of Limbarrow. I tried to stretch my understanding to include all of these places in my head as Limbarrow, but it was impossible. I had no idea how Eustace and Moira could calmly walk between shops and houses and inns and not feel terrified. Does that sound mad? It sounds mad to say it aloud, but it really was impossible to comprehend. One could not walk, I presume, from house into another the way I was allowed in the Abbey. The only place I was restricted from going was the back of Eustace's library, which was really only a request. I watched people knocking on doors and waiting for someone to invite them in. I saw men standing impatiently outside of shops, waiting for proprietors to return. Everyone, it seemed, was beholden to the terms of some uneasy peace treaty. Everyone was the king of their own little castle. Living like this would make me even more miserable than the Abbey did. As we passed people in the street, we would offer them fritters from our bags. Most conversation was short if there was conversation at all. Moira was perfectly chipper, and Eustace maintained her usual calm demeanor through even the most brusque encounters. The rudest people acted as if we weren't even there. One even bumped Eustace on the shoulder, and I'm sure it was on purpose. Eustace didn't react at all, save for a quietly muttered curse word I dare not repeat. For my own part, I was doing my best to keep up the act. I dragged my feet in lockstep with my cohorts and went through the motions of lifting up the bag. I didn't speak unless I absolutely needed to. I forced a smile to each passerby, instead hoping it would be enough. My cheeks were already numb by the end of the first street. Goodness, we still have so many left. Darcy made too many, as usual. That's just like her. She's very kind. Is there something wrong with her making lots? No, of course not. No. It's sweet how excited she gets about helping out. Not every observation about someone is a criticism. Oh, be nice. Weren't you just getting snitty about Hedwig calling you? I can't even remember now. Inscrutable? That wasn't really a criticism either. It seemed that Moira was the only one of us having any fun. We trudged through more streets, passing out fritters and knocking on doors. Not a single person had anything to say to us beyond a courtesy greeting and thanks, and many people didn't even have those to spare. I don't think anyone is home. Try just one more time. I feel terrible if you missed someone. Not a peep. All of a sudden I was soaked. Oh man, they poured water down? It happened so fast that I didn't even realize what had happened at first. I felt as if someone had boxed me around the ears. Ah, Hedwig! What in... Ugh. An unconcerned-looking woman was looking down at us from the window above, holding a still-dripping laundry bucket. My apologies, miss. I didn't see you three down there. I don't think she did. I think she did it on purpose. Of course not. It's very easy to miss nuns at the door. Well, there's no need for sarcasm, miss. Neither Eustace nor Moira had gotten very wet at all. I, however, was covered head to toe. There was an unpleasant, frosty smell coming from the water, and I realized that my bag of fritters was sopping wet as well. Would you like a fritter, madam? No, thank you, miss. Of course, madam. We'll just be off then. Have a good day, miss. The woman retreated from the window without so much as an apologetic glance in my direction. Well, at least it was water. Here, Hedwig. Let me carry that. No. If you're sure... Eventually, we came to a square with several diverging streets. Eustace leaned against a wall, looking fed up. Moira looked as if she had finally noticed that Eustace and I were not as sociable as she was. Her pleasant smile morphed into an expression altogether more concerned. How are you two doing? I just want to get this over with. Yes, I've had quite enough of this, to be honest. Nobody seems to even care that we're here. Maybe it'd be best to just cut our losses and go home? We can't do that. No, that wouldn't be right. Why not? Both of you had horrible things to say about the people here on the way down. Not so loud. And with all honesty, I must agree with them now. And now you're dedicated to finishing a completely thankless task for them? Why? She has a point. I mean, I don't love the idea of telling the superior we gave up, but... We really can't go back until we've finished. Why not? Eustace... Moira motioned for Eustace to come closer and whispered something into her ear through her hood. Right. I'm sorry, Hedwig, but we really need to do this job properly. I know it's difficult. What's going on? Nothing? It's really nothing. No. What kind of fool do you take me for? But what did you tell her? Hedwig, why does nobody treat me with any sort of respect? Am I so difficult to explain things to? Would my fragile little mind simply burst if you explained whatever you told her to me as well? No, Hedwig, please. You're making a scene again. Moira took a step forward, positioning herself between Eustace and myself. Hedwig, I don't think you're foolish or difficult or anything like that. So, what do you tell her? I can't say. What is it? What could it possibly be? The fury I had been nursing before the cart ride was back in full force, and this time I could not control it. I raised my hand and Moira flinched, but she stood her ground. Hedwig's instinct is to always go for violence. I did not hit her, of course, although I would not like to dwell on how close I came. Instead, I jabbed a finger in her face to gesticulate angrily. You're lying then. No, Hedwig, don't. Oh, how like Elisha I felt. Not bald, but nonetheless belittled and insulted for things outside of my control. I cursed Moira, I cursed Eustace, I cursed the whole town for all to hear. We need to get her back to the Abbey. This isn't healthy for her. But I hope Angela is right about bears. Huh? I said I hope Angela is right about the bloody bears. I don't follow. Eustace was nonplussed, but Moira had pieced my admittedly cumbersome insult together. She's crying! Not Eustace, Moira is crying! And I think they're using nonplussed wrong. Tears were rolling down her cheeks. You don't really mean that, Hedwig? Her sniffling caught me off guard. But before I had a chance to feel sorry, she had stormed off, away from the town square. My bag of fritters was still in her hand, and I remember that it bounced so inelegantly it would have been funny in any other situation. Eustace cast a mild yet dark expression at me. If you wanted to get back to the Abbey sooner, you should have kept that little tantrum to yourself. Well, what did she tell you? Never you mind. She hoisted her bag over her shoulder and made to follow Moira. Stay put. I'll clean up this mess. Wait, you're leaving me alone? Yes. But no, that's silly. Let me come with you. I'm so sorry about all that. This is just so different and... Stay. Put. Why? Because I don't really want to be around you right now. But we're friends still, right? We said so. After what you did to her? You said so in the cart. Without another word, she turned around and set off after Moira. I was left all alone in the town square, my frock still dripping mildewy water and onto the cobblestones. I let the wet sack of food fall to the ground and sat down on a low wall. I gripped the bricks, digging my fingernails into the hard stone and biting my own lip, trying not to cry. Was my behavior so out of line? I deeply regretted upsetting Moira, but I had withstood just about enough for one adventure. I was in a strange place where strange things were happening to me. And now I was all alone. Every now and then, one of the townsfolk would walk through the square, but they paid me no mind. A dog wandered over to me and I froze. I had never seen one before. I recognized it instantly, but I was scared stiff. Even if it was a farm animal, I couldn't help but notice its sharp teeth and animal eyes. Shoo, I'm no food. The hound ignored my pleas and instead began snuffling around my legs. I held my breath as it rudely prodded my stomach with its snout all of a sudden. Please. Please. Please go away. I yelped as the creature drew itself up on its hind legs and rested its front paws on my knees. Not daring to move in case it felt like tearing me to pieces, I whimpered as it continued sniffling. After a genuinely harrowing handful of moments, it finally decided I didn't seem all that tasty and returned to the ground, but not before licking my face for good measure. I was relieved I was spared from becoming its dinner, but... Come now, why are you laughing? I was frightened. I could have been eaten. Oh, really now? Anyway, the beast turned its attention to the sack of fritters on the ground. I suppose that it had smelt those first and had been looking for them the whole time it had been assaulting me, but nonetheless, it had given me an awful fright. Even still, I felt the creature deserved better than dirty fritters. Leave those alone. They're all foul and soggy. The dog paid me no mind and wrestled with the sack until the contents spilled out onto the stone. Immediately, the dog began scarfing down huge bites of the sodden pastries, which were quickly becoming one big, messy blob. Don't. I suppose I had no reason to stop it. At the very least, it wasn't eating my face. Oh, does that not bother you? Is there nothing better for you to eat? I reasoned that the dog probably had no reason to care about the food that was soaked through with dirty water. I sat and watched it eat. It was deeply unpleasant, but I couldn't look away. Moist crumbs fell out of its mouth as it chomped loudly. The same food being left up over and over. Eventually, however, the laundry water seemed to win. The dog made a shuddery, spasming motion that made me flinch reflexively. I was unsure if it was about to wheel around to attack me. Instead, it made a ghastly, hacking sound. Half-chewed slop poured out of its mouth. Oh. The fetid mountain of ruined pastry grew even larger. Yet it kept eating. It paid no mind to what assuredly must have tasted even worse after coming out than before it went in. Had this creature been a man, I would have begged him to stop. But all I could do is watch it continue to regurgitate and reconsume the hard slop the sweet pastries had become. And then I heard a sound of trumpets. Oh! A mule and a wooden cart had arrived in the town square. No driver sat in its front seat. What? A wooden pole sat in place of a rider, reaching up into the sky. I moved my gaze up the pole to see that a large flag, or perhaps a kite, was drifting idly in the midday breeze. I held my breath as a cart passed me by. Another cart passed me by, and then another. Each flying a new color, a different flag, a new kite. What does it mean? They drove in circles around the square. I think there were a dozen in all. The dog chased the tails of the mules as they walked past, dodging out of the way of the wheels at the last possible moment each time one came too close. In between each cart's passing, the little creature would return to its prized mound of filth for another bite before getting distracted again by the next donkey's tail. The trumpets blew again, this time much louder, deeper, more mournful. Is it something to do with the war? A new kite joined the procession, this time not a simple flapping cloth, but an intricately adorned effigy. A man. His face was chiseled handsomely, his expression stoic. Two poles held this effigy aloft, one in each of the man's wooden hands. As this cart passed me, the effigy's head turned to face me. What? His eyes met with mine, and I realized it was no effigy at all, but a real figure. Wooden hands, though. His gaze felt terrifying and peaceful all at once, and he beckoned me to follow him. What? The dog had disappeared, only its horrid meal remained. I took care to avoid stepping in it as I left my perch on a low wall and followed the cart as it peeled away from the procession in the square. I assume it continued behind me, I do not know. I was transfixed by the cart ahead of me. I assume that handsome man must be the one from the very beginning of the story. I followed the cart and its floating rider through empty streets. I felt disconnected from my body, as if my footsteps were happening after I had already performed the next. I was drifting over the cobblestones. I felt as light as the man above the cart did. The sight of the effigy had already made me weep, but I could feel a confused urge to burst into sobs welling up inside. But I also felt light, calm, and even joyous. I felt everything there possibly was to feel at once. As the cart reached a dead end, however, I felt a moment of doubt. I did not want the sensation to end. I doubled back, hoping the cart would turn and lead me again. It did no such thing. I felt a brief moment of panic as I turned around to perhaps coax the man to follow me and saw that it had disappeared. I gasped and lunged around again, hoping I had just missed it passing me. No such luck. I spun around again and again until I realized that I was no longer touching the ground. What? I floated above the village. She is hallucinating, isn't she? I could see all of the streets, all of the houses, all of the nasty little fiefdoms and the people who ruled them. I was being pulled up and up by some force that I knew I had to give myself over to. This was right. This was where I needed to be. A strange sensation that I was being tugged up by the scruff of my neck eventually gave way to a feeling of blissful control. I was flying now, just as the man above the cart had been. I was flying higher, in fact, and all the people below me could see what their cruelty and indifference had wrought. My ascendance, their abandonment. But then I felt that hand around my neck again, firmer this time, more assertive. I was dragged by the throat the rest of the way up to my destination. By the throat! A plateau above the village, overlooking the lake. I struggled to breathe. My breath was ragged. I backed with whatever it was that helped me to let me go. Eventually, I was flung to the grass. I fell on my back into the cold dew, my head crashing against the dirt. I felt a ripple of pain emanate from the back of my skull all the way through my whole body. I could not move anymore. I stared into the clouds. They were a deep gray, heavy with rain. They covered the sky almost completely, save for a bright spot growing brighter above me. Oh! Oh! That scared me! Oh, what was that? The clouds parted and the man I had followed appeared between them. What is he holding? I know what this is. Do you call it a compass? It's a thing that you use to draw circles with. He was gigantic, magnificent, terrifying. His piercing stare kept me pinned to the ground. Oh shit. Oh, I'm so scared. Do you see that? All-seeing, all-knowing. Oh fuck, I'm scared. The trumpets sounded one final time. He has a crown. This could be a biblical figure, or maybe the king of England at the time, I don't know. Oh shit, I hate this kind of thing, it's so scary. Oh god. Disappear, get out of my sight. The man finally blinked, and with slow, regal grace, he withdrew between the black rain clouds that flanked him. It began to pour. I was all alone. Oh god. I hate this so much, it's so scary. Oh shit. Oh shit. Oh, that scared me too. Heart. Ducks. Must be something. Must be something. You know what? I'm gonna search this up. Oh, but I'm just kinda scared of any jump scares that might come. So scary. Now we're in the village wondering. I'm gonna end here for today. I'm gonna search up what that was. That was terrifying. Yeah, but today was kind of a short episode, was it not? And all we did was go to the village, but we saw Moira has like some kind of secret, but I don't think it's a big secret. I feel like it could be something like Catherine, where maybe she has a secret lover or something and she can't tell the rest of the sisters. Maybe it's something like that. But yeah, Hedwig had a lot of outbursts this episode, and she was very... I can understand and empathize with her as like a fellow human being, but at the same time it's also a bit frustrating to see her take her anger out on other people when it's not really their fault. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!